Today's podcast episode is one of a series of podcast episodes I recorded with my husband, Mac Story, on a book that we co-wrote together, Change Happens, Leading Yourself and Others Through Change. I know you'll enjoy the leadership principles that Mac brings to the Fearfully and Wonderfully Me podcast, so be sure to follow Mac on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, or Twitter at Mac Story, or subscribe to the Blue Collar Leadership podcast for more on the leadership principles that Mac teaches.
All right, everyone. Rhea and I are happy to be back with you today for part 7 of 15 on our book, Change Happens, Leading Yourself and Others Through Change. And today we're on part 7 of 15, and that is titled The Challenge of Change. And so I want to open up today's episode and talk about a quote from Truett Cathy, founder of Chick-fil-A. Truett says, "We hear of businesses succeeding or failing, but it is not the business, it is the people who succeed or fail." And that to me, that's just a powerful quote. And I mean, it relates directly, obviously, to this section we're on, the challenge of change, because we were speaking a week or two ago, or a couple of weeks back, we were I can't remember who were we speaking, Rhea, where I was talking. Yeah, it was a couple of weeks ago. We were speaking to the
At the SCORE conference?
100 or so, something like that, construction company owners, CEOs, and top leaders. And one of the VPs come up afterward, and he said, because I had shared from the stage, I was talking about Chick-fil-A as an example. Nothing against the other folks; they're trying to do what Chick-fil-A is doing. They've done some amazing things, but Chick-fil-A just has an impressive model. But I was telling the group, look at four corners at an intersection. And you put Chick-fil-A on one corner and put any of the other 3 fast food restaurants on the other 3 corners. And not here to beat up the other 3, but I'm talking about the challenge of change. There's a reason that they're chasing Chick-fil-A a lot of times relative to all different types of metrics. And part of it is because the challenge of change is getting them. They've all got billions of dollars. They can buy the great location, be right there on the same corner, opposite corner as Chick-fil-A. They can buy the same great equipment. They can buy the same great ingredients if they want to. They can do all that stuff. But what they can't do is buy the character of the leaders at Chick-fil-A, and especially Truett Cathy, who founded it, and today he's passed away, but his legacy lives on. Can't buy that. And the challenge of change is these other organizations who are changing them, they literally have to change their character to do what Chick-fil-A is doing or better. These other organizations have to change their character. And that's a challenge, because that's a big change. Changing our characters, not simple, is it, Rhea?
No, and the thing about change and the challenge of change is hard. Even when we do want it, it's hard. And it's especially hard when we don't want it or it wasn't our idea. Because the challenge of change is it forces us really to dig into our subconscious mind with our conscious mind. It requires us to override our subconscious with our conscious mind, and that's a challenge for anybody. It's a challenge when we want to just change our personal habits and change ourselves, like you said, and develop our character. But it's also a challenge when we want to accept a new state or leverage change when it happens or create those opportunities. I like to use the analogy in the book of just imagine this. If you are just, working in your, and these days, a lot of people are working from home. Um, if you're just, in your home one day and you're sitting in your living room, for example, and you get up and you walk into the kitchen, but it's daylight outside and all the windows are open, the blinds are open. And so, there's plenty of light in the house and you really don't have to flip on a light switch to move from the living room to the kitchen, right? It doesn't require any thought or any effort. You just move into a different room. But if you were to try that same thing at night, You leave one room, and maybe the room that you're sitting in, the living room, is all lit up. You've got the lamps on and the overhead light on, and then you get up and you walk into another room and it's dark. And so there isn't any light there. And so now you've got to do something different. You got to turn on the light switch, right? And in order to function like that. And that's kind of the same thing that causes the challenge of change, right? Before, we were accustomed to just moving from room to room and we didn't have to do much. That's the status quo. That's the situation that we're used to. But when something happens and change happens, now we've got to do something different. We got to flip on the light, so to speak, figuratively, because the situation around us has changed. And we're not going to be able to function if we don't respond to that new environment. So, change of any kind always brings with it the challenge of adapting to something new. And habits that served us in the past are no longer helpful.
So the challenge of change comes in consciously having to think about the new reality. And that is a challenge. And you guys remember I logged over 11,000 hours leading people through change from 2005 to 2012. I mean, that's what I did as a leader and a consultant. And there's no doubt on Monday when I walked in to kick off these process improvement teams, the first thing they did was consciously start thinking about the new reality. I mean, that's what we had to deal. That's what I had to deal with the most was the individuals speaking about talking to each other, and they had influence. Right on Monday morning, they had a lot of influence, a lot more than me most of the time. Even if they didn't know each other, they knew they worked in the same company. They knew they were on the same page. They didn't want to change a lot of times, so there was a lot of influence between them. But there was a lot of challenge. The challenge of the change was I had to get them to buy into me while they were consciously looking for all the reasons it was not going to work for them. What's going to be worse about it? And part of the thing I had to do is help them overcome that challenge by helping them see a better future because all they were focused on was a worse future. And most of the time that doesn't even happen. All the stuff they talked about on Monday, most of the time, never even happened. Pretty much all the time, but I won't say all the time because sometimes some bad things could have happened that maybe they saw coming and they knew something about leaders in the organization that maybe were going to have an impact that I didn't understand, or there was going to be a resistance from another department that I didn't understand. But for the most part, pretty much everything they talked about that they saw as a challenge was not even a challenge, especially when they were talking about all the stuff that I knew about and they didn't know about because they couldn't know about, right? They didn't have the lean knowledge. They didn't have the experience and the competency of what I was bringing to the table as a consultant. So they couldn't see what I saw. They had to trust me. And on Monday, they didn't trust me. So I had to go in and earn that trust to overcome the challenge.
Yeah, what I think we're kind of saying here is that we've got to take action in order to respond to the new reality, and that requires extra effort and energy. It's not going to happen accidentally. Things never get better by accident, right? If you notice that, it always requires extra effort and extra energy to push forward. And like I said, this is tough when we want the new reality, and it's much more difficult when we tell ourselves we don't want it. Whether it's increasing your influence in your career, your organization, or your job, or maybe it's changing the way you eat so that you lose a few pounds, right? That's still going to be a change, and those are both positive things if we want them. And it's still hard to do that, even when we desire that objective, when we're working towards that goal, it's still tough. I mean, how many statistics show how many New Year's resolutions where people want to change themselves or change some situation in their lives, and it's still hard to do? And how much more difficult is it when we just tell ourselves, I don't want that change. I don't want that new reality. And so it's almost impossible, right? If we have the mindset that we are not willing to work towards it, we almost can't achieve it. And there again, we're back to what we talked about in the last episode of snoozing and losing, if we're not going to embrace it. Um, I think it's because change is a challenge because it forces us to cross the gap between knowing and doing.
Yeah, so I can talk about that, Rhea. All the stuff you were just saying. you know it. Everybody listening doesn't know it till I share this right here. But last time I went and got my physical in November of last year, in November 2020, went in for my physical, and the doctor was telling me my cholesterol was a little high, my blood pressure was a little high, and he was telling me all the things I could do. And I mean, I'm pretty healthy. He told me I'm healthier than 90% of the other 51-year-olds that come in there. I don't take any medicines. I do not want to take any medicines. I don't want to be the guy that has to take a medicine on some type of pill every day. I don't want to do it. I don't even like taking a pill every now and then. I don't like getting all that junk in my body. And talking about the challenge of change, and he, I told him I eat healthy, and I do eat healthy compared to most people, but I was not eating healthy as I could compared to how good could I eat, right? The challenge of change. I was resisting change. I was doing all the stuff we're talking about on the personal side right here, right? Because that's the hardest part sometimes, is to lead ourselves well. And so, I come to talk to you because you the health guru, and and I'm like, what's really gonna make a difference in all this? And you knew what it was, and I really didn't know, but I'm gonna find out for sure, and I'm already finding out to some degree. And you're like, you got to cut out some meat. I didn't want to cut out any meat. I like meat 3 times a day, Rhea, and
Mac the carnivore.
I got to have it. At least, I mean, I want it. I ain't got to have it. I can live without the meat. But so to share with you guys today, being transparent about what we're talking about, uh, and actually change requires us to take action and change something on the inside so we can achieve results on the outside. And that's very literal to what I'm talking about. I had to change what's inside of me to change the results of the blood pressure uh, monitor on the outside of me,
Mm,
or the blood test on the outside of me going to the lab. I have changed what's inside of me, literally talking about health, to change what's on the outside, and that's all the indicators of my results. But
mm-hmm.
but I did cut that out. And Rhea, I couldn't do it without Rhea. I mean, if Rhea was not in my life, I'd probably be in worse shape, much worse, because I wouldn't eat near as healthy. But she's a lot of help, so she eats healthy anyway. She doesn't eat a lot of meat. We're not vegetarians, especially me. And Rhea's not a vegetarian. She just eats healthy. It's not a label. If she wants some meat, she'd eat some meat, but she don't really want it most of the time. Occasionally, maybe. But the whole point of this was to say, I mean, my blood pressure just in a couple of months, I've probably cut out 70, 80%. I mean, I eat maybe meat 3 times a week, where I used to eat it 3 times a day. I mean, that's a big impact. My blood pressure's down, squared away, and it's probably only still going to get better. And then I'll go back later in May and actually get the blood test and see what the cholesterol is, and hopefully I've done it. And even if it's not where I want to be, I haven't cut meat out completely, but it's obvious that it's helping, and I could always do that. But that is an extreme challenge of change. I don't know, man. I don't know how bad do I want it. But see, that's what I got to decide. Do I value my health? What do I value the most? Do I value eating meat, or do I value being healthy? Or do I value eating meat, or and not having to take medicine? Because that's probably not going to work. Can't do both. You're gonna have to. If I'm gonna eat meat, I'm gonna have to take medicine to keep my cholesterol down and other things. I don't want to take the medicine, so I'm gonna keep trying to maintain it as best I can. But that's exactly what we're talking about. I mean, I'm living it. We're all living it. If we want to look in the mirror and find where it's happening, change is challenging every single person listening to this podcast. If you think you ain't challenged by change, you better open your eyes, because you ain't being real with yourself. You better go find that mirror and apologize.
Change is challenging the people who aren't listening to the podcast too.
You
They're just not at a level of awareness to know it.
you right. And see, I love change, but I don't love that change.
No,
I
you
love
had
some changes.
but you have done really well. I mean, you've had to kind of learn to make those changes on a personal level, like you said, and it's showing. You change some things and change some habits, and you're getting some really good results. So that's awesome. I love what Andy Stanley says about change. He says, progress is always preceded by change, and change is always preceded by challenge. When there is no challenge, there is no change. And it's the job of the leader to challenge the process. And I love that because, when he talks about progress is always preceded by change, change is always preceded by challenge. So that means when we're facing the challenge of change, we know that that's a necessary and critical step in the process of progress. And, he goes on to say it's the job of the leader to challenge the process. And I love to think of processes as systems, whether that's systems in an organization to get your product out or your service or your business, whatever that is, or systems on a personal level are really just the habits that we create. And if we're going to lead ourselves, then we've got to challenge the habits that we create for ourselves. If we're going to lead others in the organization, we've got to challenge the processes and the systems of the organization and say, how can we make it better? Right? How can we make it better? Because that's going to be progress. And if you want a better career and if you want more out of life, change is not an option. It's required.
Mm, there's a lot of truth in that statement, Rhea. I mean, if I want more out of life, literally, talking about what I was talking about a moment ago about my health, anybody, if you want more life, literally, you got to be healthier. There's no other way to get more life, literally, like to extend the years that you live on this planet. You've got to become more
You
more
can't
healthy.
order it from Amazon.
No, you can't order it. You got to pay the price, and it's something I always joke about. I tell people, when I'm telling people, one on one in conversations about the health changes that I've made. I mean, I've made a lot over the years. I'm just some more that I was talking about a moment ago. The meat, I kind of saving that one for last. It's one of the hardest things I've ever changed. It was a lot harder to slow down my meat consumption than it was to stop drinking alcohol or to stop drinking sodas and start eating healthier foods and drinking raw fruit and vegetable juice and all that stuff I already do. That I thought that was hard, but that was not really hard compared to the getting rid of the meat. But what I tell people is, and it applies to some other folks out there listening, depends on how old you are or how unhealthy you may be, but definitely it comes with age most of the time. But I tell people my free ride's over. I mean, I really got to start paying the price to be healthy because, younger people they can do a lot of the stuff that I can't do anymore, or maybe you can't do, whoever's listening out there. If you've got some years on you already, you know what I'm talking about. The free ride's over. Because when you're young, you can do all the bad stuff and still be healthy. You can look lean and mean and, squared away and life's good. You ain't got problems and you ain't overweight. You ain't got high blood pressure and you don't have high cholesterol. You ain't got all that stuff. It's just a free ride while you're young. But as you get older, your free ride's over. You either going to pay the price to be healthy or you're not going to be healthy anymore. All those years are going to add up cumulatively. And I want to
Uh,
just say, go ahead, Rhea.
I was just going to say maybe what you were going to say. That's one of the points that we talk about in the book is if you want to continue to get the same results that you're getting today, then you don't have to do anything different, right? But that's not true. Because if you continue to get the same, if you want to continue to get the same results you're getting today, you have to do something different because circumstances are going to change. From a physical standpoint, yeah, we didn't really have to worry about how healthy we ate when we were 15 or 18 or 28. But as we start to get older, our metabolism slows down and our bodies start to just, get older and not function as well. And so now we've got to do something different just to maintain the same results. Not even talking about getting more life and getting healthier and extending our life.
Yeah, so just generically speaking to all the people out there relative to the challenge of change, this is what I'm about to share is one of the things I heard early in my career. I still hear it sometimes, but the difference is I used to believe it. Now I know it's a lie. And it's so crazy how we can grow and change. But you may have heard this out there to the folks listening. You may have even said it. I mean, I said it back when I believed it because I heard somebody say it and I thought, oh, that's cool. I'll say it too, whenever time fits. But what I heard was, if you always do what you always done, you'll always get what you always got. And a lot of people say that and they believe it. But I'm here to tell you it's not true. And I'm going to explain it to you so you can validate it. If you always do what you always done, you'll always get what you always got. That's a lie. This is why. Because if someone else, and I'm talking about in the business standpoint, really, the professional standpoint, if your company, and again, that's my background, leading companies through change on purpose to get better, even when there's nothing wrong with them, they want to get better because this is why. Because see, if they say we're squared away, we're doing awesome, we can just keep doing what we always done, and we're going to get what we always got. That assumes that everybody else is doing the same thing. They're just going to keep doing what they always done and get what they always got. We know that's not what's happening in the business world. Most organizations are trying to get better, unless they really love that term, that's the way we always done it. And the boss
Mm,
believes that's always we always done it that way, so they don't want to change. And but if the competition is out there changing and striving to get better, they're going to get more. What they're going to get more of is your business.
mm.
They're going to get more of your business. And if they get more of your business, that means you're not going to get what you always got. You're going to get less business. And eventually you're going to have no business. And so that's what I mean, that's why that's so important to me right there.
I always come back to the Blockbuster and Netflix example when we talk about that, because there for a while Blockbuster was at the top of the video DVD rental game, and they weren't willing to change and embrace the new technology of streaming home videos. And essentially not embracing the change, or not seeking the change, and not getting better. They continued to do what they'd always done, but they are no longer getting what they always had gotten in the past, and have just become obsolete. I mean, you and I were talking the other day about, we had to ship off a bunch of old VHS tapes and old mini DV tapes from when we used to have a little camcorder, and we actually had to ship that to a company to get them converted to digital media so that we could actually watch them, because all of that technology there is obsolete. And so, yeah, technology is one of the most powerful ways I think we can see this. If you keep doing what you've always gotten, and technology changes, and you don't embrace the new technology, you absolutely will get left behind.
Yeah, I saw I was watching on YouTube the other night. I was watching a video on, somehow it popped up on my feed to watch. It was I didn't have to watch it, but it got my attention because it was a $2.6 million motorhome. So I watched the, it was at a motorhome show.
Wow.
I mean, I don't want to buy a motorhome. I don't need a motorhome, but the thing looked wicked. I mean, found out watching it, it had $150,000 paint job. That's why it looked wicked. It's like off the charts. But anyway, it was just neat to watch the folks talk about it. I was just curious what the thing looked like on the inside. And it was so interesting to watch the video, and the guy's telling all about it. And he goes into this wicked master bedroom that looks, I mean, nicer than most homes, maybe even bigger than a lot of them. But he was showing all what was installed in it, this high tech wicked thing, and it had a DVD player. He showed where the DVD player was. I'm like, why today are they putting a DVD player? But I mean, one reason potentially is because some people who buy that maybe are older generation and they still have
They
DVDs.
still have DVDs.
I don't know, but you would think if they were building that unless somebody asked for it, it probably wouldn't have a DVD player in it anymore. But anyway, it had one, so it made me think of that. Another thing relative to this, I just saw on the news recently where General Motors, GM, they putting out basically a vision for the future that by 2035, all of their vehicles are going to be electric, and they don't want to be left behind. I
Mm,
promise you, that's a challenge for an automotive company that you know they are who they are because they have gas powered engines, and but they're looking. They don't want to be left behind, and they still may be left behind because they may be late. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. But they're not late amongst their peers because I've heard no other automotive manufacturer kind of make any uh, statement like that. I mean, I haven't heard that from Ford or Chrysler or Dodge, whoever you want to talk about out there. But they put it out there and said they're going to do it. So I promise you, they're going through some change. I don't know if any of them folks are listening, but I promise you, they need this book that we're talking about. And the problem is they needed to have it already talked to the people. And you know
mm,
what, Ria, though, a lot of people, a lot of leaders, they'll cast a vision and change, and they just expect people to change. They don't give them any growth and development relative to changing their mindset to get them to embrace the change. And even the customers, they're going to lose a lot of customers who don't want to change. I mean, I don't
mm.
really want to drive an electric vehicle. I wouldn't mind it if it was always charged when I got in it and ready to go, and it could be charged up in like 3 minutes, like when we go fill up the tank or something like that. I wouldn't mind it at all. I kind of like it because there's got so much horsepower. I'm a horsepower guy, and those things are crazy fast, and I love that. But I really like the sound of an engine. So, I'm gonna always have an antique, I guess.
Well, maybe by the time 2035 gets here, they'll charge in 3 minutes and you'll be willing to embrace it.
They might, man. I mean, the best idea is to put the stuff in the road, so while you're riding down the road, it just charges up, and you don't ever have to charge it. It's always charged. I can handle it like that. Let me say something, Naria.
Yeah.
Right here, you know, in my notes on the book, I've got a quote from the book, probably my quote. I'm sure it came out of the chapter I wrote, probably, but it says, one of us wrote it. It says, your ability to lead yourself and others through change will determine whether you get a little more out of life or a lot more out of life. And I'm talking about on a personal level. You know, your ability to lead yourself and others, because you're going to get the most out of life when you can lead others through change as well. When you got to be able to lead yourself through change, or you're never going to be able to lead anybody else through change. You're going to be a resistor, and you're going to attract resistors. So what do you want in the future? If you struggle with change, especially if you're at the bottom of the org chart and you've been there for 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years, and you don't want to be, if you want to be, that's fine. Nothing wrong with being at the bottom of the org chart. But if you don't want to be at the bottom of the org chart, meaning the entry-level position inside of some company, you want to be more, I'm asking you right now to reflect. Are you resistant to change? Do you want to get better? If you listen to this podcast, I assume you're either not resistant or you want to get better. You got to be one of those folks, or either somebody volunteered you to listen to this and you're sitting in a room somewhere and listening to this and you care less about this. But if you're that person, you really, really ought to be thinking about, how do you look at change?
So one last quote I wanted to share as we wrap this episode up. John Kenneth Galbraith said, leaders stretch to meet the challenge and followers shrink away from the challenge. And there again, I think this is so true. Those of us who want to increase our influence, our opportunities, and get more out of life, whether personally or professionally, realize that we've got to stretch to meet the challenge of change.
Yep. And I'm going to leave us with this thought that once you begin to challenge how you think and act, you will begin to be challenged in another way. Those who don't embrace change may stop embracing you and start challenging you. You know, the people who are resistant, they're resistant together. If you change how you think and act, you're not going to be with them anymore. Now they're going to see you as being with the leaders. And so now those people are going to start challenging you. They're going to stop embracing you, and they're going to start challenging you. And that's it's one reason a lot of people don't change, because sometimes to change, you got to go travel alone for a while, because your leaders, if you've been resistant for so long, your leaders don't trust that you're truly not resistant anymore, especially when you've been resistant for the last 5 years and then instantly you're on board. So you may have to kind of be in limbo out there a while. You have to leave people behind, and you haven't attracted the people who are ahead yet. You got to lead yourself well, which is the first half of each one of these sections in the book about leading yourself well. Anything else, Rhea?
We'll get into that a little bit more in the next episode, where we talk about the fear of change. So I'm really looking forward to that.
All right. Talk to you
next time.
Start increasing your influence and maximizing your potential with Rhea's audiobooks. Available at audible.com, amazon.com, and iBooks. Please visit rheastory.com to learn about Rhea's books, resources, speaking, and training programs. Thanks for listening.